Hi, this is Gilgamesh again. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this. For all those people that support Planned Parenthood, congratulations. You're about to be. Um, the truth about Margaret Sanger, she was a eugenist. The truth about Planned Parenthood and Hitler. Yeah, this is just part one. But Hitler legacy. Everyone from Alaska to Timbuktu knows that Adolf Hitler was an evil man who performed horrific atrocities. Actually, he didn't. He orchestrated the Holocaust, but he didn't actually himself commit the atrocities. He was just the mastermind behind it. Yeah, he had others do the dirty work in the attempt to create a master race. To this end, and under the guise of euthanasia, Hitler didn't kill. Understand this. He's had others do the killing. He didn't get his hands dirty himself. He is the monster, but he isn't the monster who killed anyone. He just had others do the dirty work. Hitler had nearly 300 people who were physically or mentally disabled, weak, alcoholic, elderly, or had diseases. This says nothing of the 10 million others he had killed in search for his master race. You know, the Holocaust. Margaret Sanger's legacy. While the world would rightly condemn the Nazis for their worldwide of eugenics, few people realize that Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, held the same ideals and beliefs as Hitler did. The goal of her organization, the Birth Control League, later to be named Planned Parenthood, was to help create a superior race, a racially evolved mankind, as we will see. Margaret Sanger is the founder of the sordid organization known as Planned Parenthood, and she shared the same worldwide worldview of eugenics as Adolf Hitler did. She believed that birth control would be the best method of creating a superior race, a pure race, and a more fit race devoid of humans that were stupid, moronic, diseased, or unfit for society. Hard to believe. Don't buy it. We will examine this in her own words below, so keep reading. As an aside, eugenics is the removal of or weeding out of weak, disabled, or unfit people from society while systematically breeding people who are physically, mentally, socially, and financially strong. The goal is population control and racial purification. Yes, Hitler believed in this, but also, and so did Margaret Sanger. Her eugenics views were even admitted on Planned Parenthood's website. Below are frightened words from Sanger's own mouth. She was a woman who no doubt began with good intentions. However, she quickly went south, fallen into a debased ideal 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 oh, why am I having a problem with this? Ideal oh my god, why am I having a problem with this word? I know what it's pronounced, it's my fucking brain. Ideology and deformed worldview. Margaret Sanger and eugenics. Margaret Sanger's aim for population control and racial purification is undeniable and can be summed up in her constant chant. She would always say, more children from the fit and less from the unfit. That is the chief aim of birth control. Birth Control Review, May 1990. Sanger often placed this goal at the top of her birth control magazine publications. Sometimes the subtitles were just as chilling, such as this one, Birth Control, to create a race of thoroughbreds. The BCR, November 1921. Her ultimate goal of contraception was summed up in her own words in a New York Times interview when she said, Superman is the aim of birth control. New York Times, January 1922. Read that line again. Let it sink in. Margaret Sanger believed that the ultimate purpose of contraception was to weed out the weak people of society and systematically help the healthy people to evolve quicker into a more perfect race like into Superman. That should send a shudder down anyone's spine to know people that like that existed here in America and who worked towards ridding the world of people deemed unfit to live, just like Hitler did in Germany. In her book, Woman and the New Race, Sanger mentions 3 different viable options for removing unfit people from society. Option 1, the brutish method of war. This is the option Hitler chose and which Sanger agreed with in order for Germany to purify itself from overpopulation and from weak and inferior people. War wasn't her personal approach, but she agreed that Hitler's argument was sound, though she would conveniently criticize Hitler later once his belief in eugenics came under attack. Option 2. Let the defectives and stupid people die out by allowing disease and other natural remedies to take their toll and lead them to their natural end. In other words, do not work to save the sick and dying people of society. Just let them die. This is one reason that Sanger abhorred the Catholic Church, abhorred the Catholic Church and her charities because because it just kept these defectives alive longer and used precious resources. She has a whole chapter in her book vehemently attacking charities. Option 3. By using birth control, sterilization, and segregation, which she called the more sane and civilized approach to racial superiority, some philosophy and goal as Hitler, just a different method. Woman and the New Race. 156 through 159 and split. For Sanger, birth control, segregation, sterilization, and abortion, if necessary, could help the population to evolve faster by removing weak people, weak in mind, body, health, and economic conditions. Thus, while she may have ideas to help women and help make healthier families in some sort of warped way, her motives were completely eclipsed from the start due to the bizarre worldview from which she operated. While trying to help women, she systematically sought to weed out inferior races and unfit people, including women, ironically, and with fierce force if need be. Sanger wrote a book entitled The Pivot of Civilization. In it, she states, birth control is the pivot of civilization. Birth control, which has been criticized as negative and destructive, is really the greatest and most truly eugenic method. And its adoption as part of a program of eugenics would immediately give a concrete, realistic power to the science. As a matter of fact, birth control has been accepted by the most clear-thinking eugenists in the most constructive and necessary means to racial health. Those clear-minded eugenists, she is speaking of were racist, white supremacist, whack jobs that would be discussed and illuminated upon in part 2. In short, some of the same people who wrote for Hitler also wrote for Margaret Sanger. Sanger may have accomplished some good things, but it is surrounded and obliterated by the death and destruction of her worldview. Margaret Sanger also wrote, "The most urgent problem today is how to limit and discourage the fertility of the mentally, physically defective. Possible drastic and even Spartan methods may be forced upon American society if it continues complicitly to encourage the chance and chaotic breeding that has resulted from our stupid, cruel establishment. Sentimentalism." Sanger continues the emergency problem of segregation and the sterilization must be faced immediately. Every feeble-minded girl or woman or the heredity type, especially of the moron class, should be segregated during the reproductive period. Otherwise, she is almost certain to bear imbecile children who, in turn, are just as certain to breed other defectives. I'm laughing because that's just way too funny. The male defectives are less dangerous. Segregation carried out for 1 or 2 generations would give us only partial control of the problem. She continues, "When we realize that even feeble-minded person is a potential source of an endless genie of defect, we prefer the policy of immediate sterilization, making sure that the parenthood is absolutely prohibited to the feeble-minded." Talk about no free will dictatorship. Wow, that is scary. Sounds very much like the Third Reich in Nazi Germany, and why shouldn't it, since Sanger learned from the same people who taught Adolf Hitler. Quotes upon quotes could be enumerated have regarded the radical and racist doctrine that was forced upon America by Margaret Sanger. Her racial views, clear and obvious, and it is the very reason she started Planned Parenthood. For this reason, also Sanger hated charities because they kept inferior people alive. In contrast, listen to her enemy, the Catholic Church, and the compassionate and loving position taken in regards to the unfit and stupid people of society. Even if some little angels in the flesh, through the physical and mental deformities of their parents, may appear in human eyes to be hideous, sorry about that. Plot. We must not lose sight of this Christian thought that under and within such visible malformation lives an immortal soul to be saved and glorified for the entity among the blessed in heaven. Even if the little angels in the flesh, through the physical and mental deformities of their parents, may appear in human eyes to be hideous, shapen, a blot on civilized society. We must not lose sight of this Christian thought that this is the difference between Catholic Church's view lived out through truly great people like Mother Teresa, who was world renowned for her work with the poor, and then Margaret Sanger's view, who would have just let them die or even help them to die. Sanger's main enemy was the Catholic Church, who stood for the dignity of all humans, life, even the weakest among us. Jesus taught that, and the Catholic Church upholds it. I suppose that is no surprise then that the Catholic Church remains the staunch opposition to Planned Parenthood, which takes the life of over 300,000 Americans, innocent and unborn babies, every year in abortions. Not all life is precious to Sanger. Some lives needed to be exterminated. I don't suppose we have evolved much, ironically, since so many people in this country are all right with millions of innocent children dying, and they don't even blink an eye. They call it choice. The Catholic Church calls it tragedy, injustice, the murder and the taking of an innocent life. Catholics will never stop opposing and working towards defending those babies who don't have a right to life or a voice of their own to speak. Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in America, taking the lives of over 300,000 little babies every year, the vast majority having nothing to do with finances or difficult circumstances. Even worse, the Planned Parenthood has been exposed for selling baby body parts after abortions for money. Yep, this is true. Frightening, sickening, unethical, evil, and morally wrong are some words that come to mind. It seems like the immortality of Sanger has been passed on to future and current generations. She wanted more independent women, happier, stronger families, and a new morality. Again, in her own sort of warped way, thanks to contraception, the opposite can come. Hold on, I'm not done. She wanted more independent, okay, happier, stronger families, and a new morality. Again, in her own words way, thanks to contraception, the opposite came true. Women are being used and abused more than ever, with men being able to have lifeless, loveless sex without fear or consequences. Well, until they get to hell. Women being used for their bodies and what they can put out. The rampant objectification. Oh, nobody's objectifying women. Stop that. This is pretty stupid on that. Of women through pornography that they choose to do. No one forces them to do it. The breakdown of the family, which, by the way, the left loves to destroy the family, and the skyrocket of divorce among those things. These are the result of contraception and the removal of love the way God intended. People thought birth control would lead to less abortion, but they were wrong. Abortion skyrocketed after the use of contraception, and I'm thankful for the Catholic Church who believes all life is precious, but from contraception to natural death. I'm also thankful this October, which is National Pro-Life Awareness Month, that the majority of the country is pro-life, pro-woman, pro-baby. They are saving lives and not ending them for awesome pro-life. Yeah. Margaret Sanger, where we learn the radical views from Hint, the same people who taught Hitler. Okay. Yeah, and then there's this. Hitler, the Ku Klux Klan, and Margaret Sanger. Planned Parenthood clinics have followed along the same lines as its racist founder. A lot of what people don't realize, Hitler actually met Margaret Sanger, and I think he met her. I could look this up. I think he did. Yeah. I think he did. Of course. Okay, I'm just looking this up real quick. Of course, they try to lie about her, but yeah, Margaret Sanger was quite the sick woman. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to do this about her. She and Hitler believed the same things. There's also this article. Hitler, the Ku Klux Klan, and Margaret Sanger. Planned Parenthood clinics have followed along the same lines as its racist founder. Yeah. My response concerns Ray Mill recent pro-abortion article, which accumulates how women of color and poor women are in need of clinics like Parenthood to provide abortions for them. Well, if you believe in wiping out, a race, yeah. Planned Parenthood was founded by the late Margaret Sanger. Sanger began the movement by speaking to many groups, including the wives of the Ku Klux Klan, group members who were also organized for white supremacy. There is access to much rather interesting uncovered information about her and her organization, which began circa 1921. I can barely touch on the topic of Margaret Sanger and will only be able to touch upon it here. Margaret Sanger got in tight with the KKK circles and cozied up to more like them. The following quote from the book Killer Angel discovered who some of the other friends in her new movement were. In April of 1933, the Birth Control Review, Margaret Sanger's magazine, published a shocking article entitled Eugenics, Sterilization, an Urgent Need, and it was written by Margaret's close friend and advisor, Ernst Rudin, who was then serving as Hitler's director of genetic sterilization and had earlier taken a role in the establishment in the Nazi Society for Racial Hygiene. Later, in June of that same year, the Birth Control Review published an article by Leon Whitney entitled Selective Sterilization, which adamantly praised and defended the Third Reich's pro-Holocaust race purification program. Sanger openly advocated for eugenics in her book, The Pivot of Society. She says eugenics suggests the reestablishment of balance between the fit and the unfit. Birth control rate among finer stocks of humanity is to be increased by awakening among the fit and rationalization of the dangers of lessened birth rates in the population of the reckless breeding of the unfit. The Pivot of Civilization by Margaret Sanger. From this type of writing she became dubbed by the awareness concerning her advocacy, which hailed as more children from the fit and less from the unfit. Sanger backed up that mentality of wanting some kind of a bigoted supreme race in much of what she said and did. It became more clear the more one studied her take her stance voting rates. We can all vote, even the mentally arrested. And so it is no surprise to find that the moron's vote is as good as the vote of the genius. The outlook is not a cheerful one. Margaret Sanger used deceptive and propaganda to fool the black population into believing that she and her movement were working towards helping them, although her talk about them was disconcerting and of a racist bent. On the Sanger Blacks Project, she said, the most successful educational approach to the blacks is through a religious appeal. We do not want word to go out that we want to examine the black population, and the minister is the man who can straighten that out, straighten out that idea if it ever occurred in their more rebellious members. Gordon's Women's Body Book, right? Yeah. The above quote speaks of Margaret Sanger's desire, wishes, or maybe just irresponsible, cruel, passing thoughts about eliminating a whole people. Many who have long studied her believe that she meant the words to exterminate as described, describing a plan she had. However, some mysteriously say she did not mean it, that way when she spoke the word exterminate. At the very least, it is highly suspect, and as to why she would choose a word like exterminate for communicating what was on her mind about a whole race of people for any reason, it seems to her pro-abortion cohorts that no speech is off limits. Every horrid sound blurb was just an accidental gaffe, no matter how incredulous, extremely racist, and hateful it sounds. Counters wise in reference to black people having diverse opinions or in parting from what she wishes for, she boldly calls these potential options rebellious, given the impression that they, as black people, are not allowed to exercise freedom of thought. Planned Parenthood clinics have followed along the same lines of Margaret Sanger, who openly wanted to eliminate the lineage of those people who found themselves in vulnerable situations, especially poor and black women, to work towards a type of superior race. Planned Parenthood organization is the enemy of this great and diverse country, a country of many into one, and of the freedoms that we as Americans stand for. Margaret Sanger experiment must end if we are to go together, all of us, into the future and free. Mary Ann Dixon. Yeah, she's right. So I just want to do that real quick about, Margaret Sanger and her views. Yeah, so you guys can understand who this woman is. She created Planned Parenthood. She and Hitler thought a lot alike, and fuck her. This is Gilgamesh signing off. You can subscribe to my channel on YouTube, it's Gilgamesh. Odyssey, it's Gilgamesh. On BitChute, it's Gilgamesh1, and on Rumble, it's Panzer Dragon. I will talk to you later. Bye.